Okay, so get this. Today we're diving into news from February 13th, 2025. And man, it is a wild ride. We're talking war, political drama, humanitarian crises, even some like head-scratching controversies, all thanks to Google News.
It's really fascinating, actually, how all these seemingly separate events, they're all intertwined. They paint this complex picture of our global, I guess, landscape, from battlefields, Ukraine, to, the halls of power, Washington. It's alarming and intriguing, I gotta say.
Well, let's start with a conflict that just won't quit the war in Ukraine. I mean, it's been dragging on, but it seems like things are getting even more intense, right?
Well, Danish intelligence is actually predicting that this conflict, right, could become a major European war within the next 5 years. And when you add to that the news that Ukrainian spies have accused their own anti-terror chief of being a Russian mole, it's like, how deep does this rabbit hole go?
Espionage. Like right out of a spy thriller, but with very real consequences. What does this mean for the conflict, you think?
It certainly adds like a layer of mistrust, uncertainty. Imagine a high-ranking official potentially feeding information to the enemy. It really underscores the complexity of this war and the challenges of finding peace. On the ground, the situation is volatile. Russia has launched new attacks on Kyiv, and they seem unwilling to negotiate on any of the territories they occupy.
And the human cost is it's staggering. We've all seen the images of that destroyed Novikhovka Dam, a vital piece of infrastructure providing water and power.
It's a chilling reminder of the environmental impact of war. The dam's destruction, I mean, it flooded villages, displaced thousands. It's a stark example of how conflict can have these ripple effects far beyond the battlefield, impacting people's lives, the environment for, generations to come.
Millions of Ukrainians are facing a brutal winter, a lot of their energy infrastructure deliberately targeted. The EU's doing what it can, providing aid, food, shelter, healthcare, restoring electricity, heat. But it's a huge task.
And we can't forget the children. They're experiencing trauma and loss. Many have lost loved ones, been injured, witnessed, unspeakable horrors. The need for psychological support and safe spaces for these children it's paramount.
Bleak picture, but then there's a twist. Donald Trump is back in the White House.
His recent election definitely adds, I think, unpredictability to the global stage, right? There's been talk of a potentially peace deal brokered by the U.S., but Russia's stance on, territorial concessions, it's a major stumbling block. It will be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Speaking of Trump shaking things up, his proposal for Gaza has definitely thrown a grenade into the Middle East peace process.
His idea, the U.S. taking control of Gaza, developing it, turning it into like a Mediterranean Riviera, it's been met with shock, outrage, particularly in the Middle East.
Leaders in Egypt and Jordan have been pretty vocal, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. Egypt fears this move would, shatter their peace treaty with Israel. And Jordan, they reject any plan with displacement of Palestinians or annexation of land. Both countries see Trump's proposal as destabilizing, potentially leading to further conflict.
And the ethical implications are fused, removing an entire population from their homeland. How would it even be possible, logistically?
The feasibility is highly questionable. It'd be an enormous undertaking, logistically, financially, and morally. We're talking about forced displacement of millions of people, many who've already suffered. It's a recipe for disaster.
Not to mention, Gaza is still recovering from the recent Israel-Hamas war, widespread destruction. Rebuilding their lives should be the priority, not some, fantasy plan to turn it into a tourist spot.
The timing is incredibly insensitive given the situation. It ignores the realities on the ground, the urgent need to address the humanitarian crisis there.
So Trump's return is already making waves, not all positive. But let's shift focus to another part of the world, Bangladesh, where the situation is equally concerning.
A story that deserves more attention. Last summer, Bangladesh saw these widespread protests, and the government's response, brutal. The UN has condemned the crackdown, calling it a potential crime against humanity.
The protests started with a government job quota system, but escalated into a movement against then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina.
The UN estimates, get this, as many as 1,400 people may have been killed. 1,400 lives lost. Security forces accused of excessive force, extrajudicial killings, arrests, torture. Horrifying situation, and since then, Hasina has fled to India. The Bangladeshi government is seeking her extradition on charges including crimes against humanity, genocide. Major development, be interesting to see how India responds.
Grim reminder that the fight for human rights and justice, it's far from over. But there's more to unpack in this deep dive, so let's take a quick pause. We'll be right back with more news from February 13th, 2025, right after this.
Yeah, definitely. Like the EU's commitment to humanitarian aid in Ukraine, it really shows the power of international cooperation, right? Their efforts to address food insecurity, shelter, healthcare, restoring infrastructure. It's making a real difference for millions.
It's inspiring to see people come together, support those in need, even with such huge challenges. But the world's not just dealing with war and political instability. There are other threats, like the dangers journalists face.
You're right. 2024, deadliest year on record for journalists, 124 reporters killed worldwide. Think about that, 124 individuals silenced, just for doing their job, informing the public. Chilling reminder of the risks they take every day.
And it's not just physical safety. There's pressure from governments, powerful entities trying to control the narrative, suppress dissent.
The crackdown in Bangladesh, prime example. Violence, intimidation to silence journalists, critics. It's a direct assault on freedom of expression, a threat to democracy itself.
Makes you realize how crucial a free press is, the cornerstone of any democracy. We, as news consumers, have a responsibility, support quality journalism, be vigilant against misinformation.
Absolutely, we need to be critical thinkers, question the information, seek diverse perspectives, media literacy, more important now than ever.
Let's shift gears a bit from global to local. I read about this massive traffic jam in India, 300 kilometers, people stranded for hours. Can you imagine?
Fascinating story, right? Seems trivial compared to what we discussed, but it shows the challenges of infrastructure, crowd management in a rapidly developing country like India.
Highlights the growing pains of organization, the need for sustainable solutions, transportation, logistics.
Exactly. Even mundane events offer insights into broader societal issues. Sometimes it's those everyday things that make us look at the world differently.
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom, but there are positive forces at work too. Individuals, organizations, governments, working to address challenges, promote peace, build a better future.
Crucial point, countless unsung heroes working behind the scenes. We need to acknowledge their efforts, find ways to contribute to positive change ourselves.
Brings us to a broader question. What role can each of us play in these turbulent times? Creating a more just and peaceful world. Easy to feel powerless, but we all have a part.
Absolutely, small actions have a ripple effect. Staying informed, engaging in conversations, supporting organizations, advocating for change, these are all ways to make a difference.
We've journeyed from war-torn Ukraine to like the busy streets of India. Seen conflict, political intrigue, human resilience. It's a lot. So what can we really take away from all this? How does it all connect? Paint the bigger picture of 2025.
Well, the interconnectedness is what strikes me. Ukraine's war, it sent shockwaves globally, energy prices, food, even political alliances. It's a reminder that what happens in one place affects us all.
And then there's Trump, back on the world stage, a figure, well, everyone knows him, and his policies we've seen can really disrupt the global balance of power. Controversial peace proposals, disregard for norms. It adds a lot of unpredictability.
Yeah, a lot of world leaders are on edge, wondering what it means for alliances, agreements. Will his foreign policy make things worse, or could it maybe lead to breakthroughs? Who knows?
And we can't forget the violence against journalists. That's alarming. Freedom of the press is under threat. Bangladesh is just one example of this disturbing trend.
It shows how important it is to hold leaders accountable, to speak out against human rights abuses. Silence, like they say, is being complicit.
So, wrapping up our deep dive into February 13th, 2025, it's a world that's both familiar and, well, unsettling. Familiar challenges, war, poverty, instability, but also new threats, climate change, cyber warfare, eroding democracy.
It demands our attention, our critical thinking, our willingness to have those tough conversations. We need people who are informed, engaged, committed to making a difference.
We may not have all the answers, but by shining a light on these issues, exploring them, understanding how it's all connected, maybe, just maybe, we can start moving toward a better future.
And that's the key takeaway, I think, remembering we're not just watching this happen, we're part of shaping the future. Despite the challenges, it's still a future we can create.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a world on edge. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to make the world a little bit better, one step at a time.